In this episode, we're going to replace vague test day nerves with clear, practical certainty by walking through how the GSTRT exam is scored, what rules shape your options during the exam, and which policies can quietly cost you points if you ignore them. A lot of smart beginners lose momentum not because they do not understand the content, but because they misunderstand the exam environment and make avoidable mistakes with time, materials, or question handling. The goal here is simple. Treat the exam like a system with known constraints, then learn to operate inside those constraints calmly and efficiently. Once you understand how points are earned and how points are lost, your preparation becomes sharper, your pacing becomes steadier, and your confidence becomes grounded in reality instead of hope. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at CyberLive in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A strong starting point is understanding what the exam looks like on paper, because that tells you what your scoring opportunities actually are. The GIAC Strategic Planning, Policy, and Leadership (GSTRT) exam is a single proctored exam with 75 questions and a 3-hour time limit, and the published minimum passing score is 76%. Those numbers matter because they create a simple truth. Every question is a chance to gain ground, and time is a limited resource you must budget. Even if you do not know the exact scoring math behind the scenes, you can still work with what is visible, which is that your performance is judged by how many questions you get right out of the total. That means your strategy is not about perfection on a few questions, but consistency across all of them. A beginner-friendly mindset is to aim for steady correct answers, avoid panic spirals, and treat tough questions as solvable with reasoning rather than as personal failures. Once you accept that every question is valuable, the next step is learning how the exam design influences your behavior. One critical rule is that you cannot review or change answers after you submit them, which means you do not get the classic test taker comfort of circling back later to second-guess yourself. That single design choice changes what maximizing points looks like, because it rewards careful, deliberate answering instead of rushing and planning to fix things later. It also rewards using the skip feature wisely, because skipping is how you delay a decision without locking in a wrong answer too early. The system allows a limited number of skipped questions, and the range varies by exam version, so you must treat skips like a limited budget rather than a casual habit. The real skill here is recognizing the difference between a question you can solve now with focused thinking and a question that is better solved later after you have seen more of the exam. That brings us to a practical point-maximizing approach to time management that fits this exam's rules. With 75 questions in 3 hours, you have an average of a little over 2 minutes per question, but averages can mislead you if you treat them like a strict rule. Some questions will be straightforward and fast, while others will require reading carefully and weighing similar answer choices. The best way to maximize points is to protect your time from being hijacked by a single stubborn question. If a question is draining minutes without producing clarity, you use the skip option to keep your overall pace healthy and prevent one problem from stealing points from many easier questions later. This approach is not about giving up. It is about keeping control of the exam. When you later return to skipped questions, you often bring a calmer mind and a clearer sense of how the exam is framing its topics, which makes difficult items more manageable. To make skipping work for you, you need to understand what happens to questions you do not answer. Skipped questions can be revisited by using the on-screen control labeled Answer Skipped, and if you do nothing, skipped questions are presented again near the end as time allows. The important part is that unanswered questions at the end are marked incorrect, so skipping only helps if you return and make a final decision. That means your true goal is not to skip indefinitely, but to delay commitment until you have enough confidence to choose. A useful beginner habit is to make a quick internal note about why you skipped, such as the question felt confusing, 2 answers looked similar, or you needed to recall a definition more precisely. That way, when you come back later, you do not waste time reliving the same confusion from scratch. You return with a purpose, you make the best choice you can, and you move on. Another major piece of the point-maximizing puzzle is understanding break time, because break rules can affect both time and focus. The exam provides 15 minutes of break time, and it can be taken all at once or split into two shorter breaks using the on-screen button labeled "Take a Break." The clock does not pause forever, though, because if you do not return by the 15-minute limit, the exam clock resumes automatically. This matters because break time is not extra time. It is a controlled resource that helps you protect your performance across the full exam window. Beginners sometimes avoid breaks because they feel like stopping means losing momentum, but fatigue is one of the fastest ways to lose points through careless reading and impulsive choices. The better approach is to use the break as a reset, especially if you notice yourself rereading sentences without comprehension or getting emotionally stuck on a few tough questions. A short reset can recover more points than it costs. Now let's talk about the open book rule, because it is both a major advantage and a common source of false confidence. GIC exams are open book, which means hard copy reference materials are allowed within limited workspace, including printed notes, an index, and books you have in physical form. The catch is that the exam is not open internet and not open computer, so you cannot access electronic documents like PDFs or Word files, and you cannot use electronic devices such as phones, tablets, USB drives, smartwatches, or extra computers. That combination is important because it means open book does not equal unlimited search. It means you can bring carefully prepared physical references that help you recall and confirm, but you still must do most thinking inside your head. Point maximization here comes from having materials that are organized for quick lookup, not from hauling in a mountain of paper you cannot navigate under time pressure. Open book rewards preparation and structure, not volume. The rules also include a few details that can surprise beginners, and surprises are the enemy of calm performance. Reading questions or talking out loud is prohibited, which matters because some people naturally whisper to themselves when concentrating. The testing environment also restricts personal belongings, and even items that feel harmless in everyday life may not be allowed into the room. The practical takeaway is not to worry about memorizing every rule word for word, but to adopt a mindset of compliance and simplicity. You want to show up with what is allowed, do what is expected, and avoid anything that creates friction with the proctor. Every disruption pulls attention away from the exam, and attention is the real currency that buys you points. When you plan to keep your workspace clean, your materials clearly permissible, and your behavior predictable, you reduce the chances of interruptions that break your concentration. Policies around identity and scheduling can also affect your attempt in ways that feel unfair if you are not prepared, so it is better to treat them as part of exam readiness. For in-person testing at Pearson VUE, PVUE, GIC requires two forms of personal identification, and the names must match what you used when scheduling. If you arrive late or miss the appointment, you can lose the slot and may be charged a seating fee to reschedule, which is both stressful and disruptive to your plan. Even if you never intend to test in person, the broader message is that proctoring rules are strict because exam integrity is strict. Beginners often think of these details as administrative, but they directly affect your ability to take the exam smoothly. A smooth exam day protects your mental energy for the questions, while a messy exam day burns mental energy on logistics. Protect your points by protecting your focus, and focus starts with arriving fully prepared for the rules of the testing environment. Another policy area that matters is the access period, because it shapes your timeline and reduces last-minute pressure. A certification attempt is typically available for 120 days from activation, and deadlines are shown in Universal Time, UTC, which can confuse people who assume the clock is in local time. The reason this connects to points is that time pressure changes how you study and how you sleep, and rush preparation usually leads to sloppy exam day decisions. If you plan early and treat the deadline as a real boundary, you remove the temptation to cram. Cramming often creates the illusion of readiness because you feel busy, but it does not build the calm recall and decision-making that strategic exams measure. When you understand the access window and the deadline format, you can design a steady pace that keeps your mind clear. A clear mind is not a luxury on exam day. It is a scoring advantage. It is also wise to understand retake and extension policies in advance, not because you expect to use them, but because knowing your options reduces fear. If you fail, there is a waiting period before you can sit again, and policies include limits such as a 30-day waiting period after a failure and an overall cap on the number of attempts per year. Retakes can be purchased within a defined window after the deadline, and extensions can add time to the deadline. But there are also limits on total access time across the life of an attempt. These details matter because fear of a one-shot outcome can cause anxiety that sabotages performance. When you know there are structured policies, the exam feels less like a cliff and more like a measured process. That does not mean you take the exam lightly. It means you approach it with steadiness. Steadiness shows up as better reading, better reasoning, and fewer careless mistakes, which directly translates to more points. With the rules and policies understood, you can now build a point-maximizing mindset that fits the strategic nature of GSTRT. Many strategic questions are not about memorizing a single definition, but about selecting the best option among several that sound plausible. That means your score improves when you slow down enough to understand what the question is truly asking, but not so much that you waste minutes rereading. A helpful habit is to identify the core task of the question in your own mind, such as choosing the best stakeholder approach, selecting the most defensible priority, or recognizing the best framing of business impact. When you recognize the task, you stop reacting to familiar buzzwords and start evaluating answers based on logic and alignment. This is how you avoid trap answers that sound security-focused but ignore business reality, or answers that sound friendly but fail to reduce risk. The exam rewards disciplined thinking, and disciplined thinking is a skill you can practice. It also helps to understand that maximizing points is not only about what you know, but how you behave when you do not know. Beginners sometimes freeze when they hit uncertainty, and that freeze costs time, focus, and confidence. The better approach is to treat uncertainty as normal and manageable, especially on a certification exam designed to measure judgment. When you face a confusing question, you can use a simple internal process. Identify what is being compared, eliminate options that clearly violate the exam's strategic perspective, and then choose the best remaining fit. If you still cannot decide, you skip and move on, because skipping is a tool for protecting your overall score. Later, when you return, you commit to an answer rather than chasing perfect certainty, because perfect certainty is rarely available. Your goal is to make the best decision with the information you have, which is exactly what strategy looks like in real life. To bring all of this together, think of the exam as a game with rules, not in a trivial sense, but in a structured sense. The rules define what you can bring, what you can do, how you can manage time, and how you can interact with questions, and once you understand those constraints, you can play intelligently. You know you cannot change an answer after submission, so you answer carefully and use skipping wisely. You know you have limited break time, so you use it strategically to protect performance. You know the exam is open book but not open electronics, so you prepare physical references that are quick to navigate. You know there are scheduling and identification requirements, so you prevent avoidable disruptions before you even sit down. When you align your behavior with the system, you stop losing points to preventable mistakes and start earning points through calm, consistent decisions. As you move forward in your preparation, keep returning to a simple truth. Points are earned by correct answers, and correct answers are more likely when your mind is steady, your time is protected, and your choices are deliberate. Exam scoring is not just math. It is the outcome of dozens of small decisions you make under pressure, and rules and policies shape the pressure. By mastering the exam format, understanding the no review constraint, using skip and break features correctly, respecting open book boundaries, and planning around deadlines and administrative requirements, you remove unnecessary friction from the process. When friction is removed, your knowledge has room to show up clearly, and your reasoning has room to work. That is how you maximize every exam point without relying on luck, because you are not just studying content, you are learning to perform well inside the exact environment where your score will be created.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.